Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. The EU is preparing to redraw the rules for Ukrainian refugees. A new proposal would continue temporary protection until 2028, but deny automatic access for newly arriving military-age Ukrainians who are not legally permitted to leave the country, opening a fresh debate over migration, security, and the bloc's support for Ukraine. Joining us now is Dennis Kolesnyk, President, MENA Research Center. Good to have you back with us. Welcome.
Hello.
All right, so let's look at this proposal now. This would not affect those already under that temporary protection, those 4.3 million Ukrainians across the EU, just those new arrivals. But what, in your mind, has prompted the European Commission from making that policy change?
Well, we all know that the Ukrainian president has been, for years actually, after the initial stage of the Russian invasion, was asking his European colleagues to, let's say, make the life of Ukrainian refugees in Europe, I wouldn't say unbearable, but difficult, so that they would be more keen to come back to Ukraine. And in my opinion, this is a continuation of his policy, and it seems he managed to convince his European partners to make the life of Ukrainians more difficult in Europe, and to also challenge the European Union values by this decision if it happens.
Mm-hmm. Also, you mentioned there some sort of coordination between Kiev and the European Union on this, and specifically about military-age men. Now, we know that conscription age has changed, has been lowered already by Ukraine. We often hear about this idea of manpower shortage. Is this, in your mind, one of the key factors, perhaps, to the battlefield right now? Will this change, and will we be able to, let's say, sustain a different kind of war with this?
Well, definitely this kind of efforts from the Ukrainian side are dictated by the shortages. We know that the Ukrainians have suffered, I mean, according to different estimations, roughly 500,000 people dead and injured. Also, we know that the desertion cases are actually rising quite a lot. There were more than 300,000 desertion. I mean, the leaving of the military unit and desertion cases registered by the Ukrainian prosecutors, which is a huge number actually. And this also is part of the Ukrainian failed mobilization campaign, where the local authorities just abuse their power. There are different cases and documented cases of Ukrainian draft officers just breaking into Ukrainian men homes and taking them. We have all seen the videos of Ukrainian police and military men drafting officers basically taking people from the street. We know there was a case of a German citizen that has no longer Ukrainian citizenship that has been drafted in Ukraine, and basically the law is abused in Ukraine. So yes, unfortunately, the shortages, or the manpower shortages in Ukraine is one of the ideas that has driven these discussions about making the life of Ukrainian men difficult in Europe, but not only.
Mm-hmm. And also looking at the timeline of this, I mean, we're looking also at I believe it's a March, the protection deadline, March 2027, unless it's renewed. So that's the key deadline for all of this to go into effect now. It has to go through all the member states of the EU to vote on this. There's already support from Austria, Poland, Germany, Denmark. Do you sense that this is the next sort of consensus now? When we look at this kind of rule and having more of this across Europe?
I mean, in my opinion, there is a huge problem with this extension of the temporary protection. First of all, the temporary protection doesn't allow the Ukrainian citizens in the European Union to have a stability. Already they have the war in their own country, so many have lost the homes, businesses, and other activities. And at the same time, they are not they don't have this legal stability in the European Union. They have this legal weakness, especially, for example, in France. We do not deliver one-year permits to Ukrainians, only 6 months provisional residency permits, which complicate the situations like renting a flat, getting a job, etc. So what I'm saying is that we have to start thinking about how we will be shifting from the temporary protection towards some more stable statuses, for example, like Spain has done. And in my opinion, this is the direction what we have to do, instead of thinking about resuming and extending protection till, I don't know, maybe 2030 if it's necessary.
Mm-hmm. And also about these protections, and just I think the news will have traveled across Ukraine as well that there will be changes. Do you anticipate that we now see a rush to the border perhaps of Ukrainian men with still this age distinction now trying to get out of Ukraine until that March deadline?
It is quite possible indeed, and we have observed Ukrainian men fleeing the country illegally because they cannot get out of the country legally if they are aged between 23 to 60. And yes, I think that it is quite possible that the Ukrainian men will be trying to flee the country until this new solution, I mean not the solution, but this new legal situation has been adopted in the European Union, if adopted. But I think there are chances that it will be adopted, and in my opinion, it's quite a pity because we declare one set of values, but at the same time, it seems we are not really applying them.
But also on different signals as well. On the human rights argument, actually, this comes from the Council of Europe, I think one of the authorities there. Now, this is not connected to the European Union. It's not an institution there. But they've actually just, and I think one of the officials said, we need more solidarity, not less, warning against restricting protection during an ongoing war. So you have that argument here. Do you think that will be listened to?
I don't think so. I think that the decision has been made by the European Commission together with the Ukrainian president and Ukrainian authorities, and I would frame it as some kind of help to mobilization in Ukraine, and which goes actually against the European values and against the European Union asylum policy, which doesn't have to be a support for a third country mobilization effort, but has to think about the population that flees the war, and how then we would be talking in future why we, let's say, cut the rights to Ukrainian men, which is by default is a discriminatory thing to circle out a group of people aged 23-60, men, Ukrainian, to forbid them the rights that other people, for example, I don't know, Syrians or people from Africa have. Well, I anticipate the another argument that may come is that we are not closing the asylum for the Ukrainian men, but at the same time, if there will be hunted down at the border and forced back to Ukraine, not having the right to this temporary protection, so how would they will be able to actually apply for this asylum? So a lot of questions are unanswered to me at this point.
Yeah, and you touched on various themes. I just want to close with one final sentence. If you just give us, what does this mean in terms of relationship between the European Union, Europe as a whole, and Ukraine, beyond just this particular change of regulation?
Well, we all know that that Ukraine is trying to get into the European Union as a member state. We know that the process is underway. The first chapter has been opened, and there are different arguments. Some arguments we may take as for this move with the Ukraine joining the European Union. Other arguments may go against, and especially during the war, because it's basically a lawless. There is a lot of lawlessness in Ukraine at this point, at this time, which means, as it is, Ukraine cannot, in my opinion, cannot become a part of the European Union, and I say it as European. But at the same time, we have to keep the doors open for Ukraine and anticipate their integration to the European Union just after the war.
Mm-hmm. All right, so from emergency support, strategic relationship, many different themes there. Thanks so much for all that. I really appreciate insights there. Dennis Kolesnyk, President of the MENA Research Center.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.